Ladies, gentlemen, and Sentinels of all ages, the closed beta for Chrono Odyssey is coming and taking place in just over a week. A brand new and very exciting looking MMO in my opinion, and thanks to the folks behind the game, the actual developers, we were given access to an early playtest to essentially get an advanced view of the majority of the things that will be in the closed beta itself, with some slight exceptions. As a part of that, Josh, Hollow, and myself, who are the three voices that you will hear in the videos on this channel, all played through every bit of content that we could find in that early playtest as a group of three together, each of us playing a different of the three available classes. And so today we're going to have a look through all 6 of the classes that are coming to Chrono Odyssey on launch, and what we know about them and how they will play or function mechanically, what weapons they will use and how they will work, and of course, importantly, we have a ton of actual experience through this early stage of the game with the 3 closed beta classes too, which does change the conversation. Starting off with beta classes then, and with the sort of standard protagonist character that they've used in a lot of the marketing, that would be the Swordsman class. Every class has access to 3 different weapon types total, but can only swap between 2 at a time actively in combat. Each weapon has its own special ability tied to it, as well as a skill tree tied to it, and different skills and cooldowns on those skills and such, which creates a very unique blending build system for this type of game, asking you to swap between your weapons actively in combat. As a class then, the Swordsman is sort of like the most standard dude. He is relatively straightforward, at least on the surface. The class resource used is Rage, which builds by attacking enemies with your basic attacks or through skills, and depreciates over time. So you often start combat with 0 rage, work up your rage through attacking, and then get to spend it on skills. The weapons available for the Swordsman are the sword and shield, and the special ability for this weapon is blocking attacks. In general, it tends to function as a very tanky weapon for the character, which also has threat generation options, allowing it to purposefully hold the attention of enemies when playing with a group. And so Hollow, who played this in the test, especially for early levels, found himself leaning towards the other 2 weapons instead of this one, because he didn't really want to tank. Greatsword, which can generate more of your class resource as its special ability, allowing you to spend more rage on your proper skills, and this weapon has a lot of slow but powerful hits. It has player movement in some of the skills too, through things like a charge or a leap, and it also has some good crowd control options as well. And of course, you could get some slow but high hitting skills through that weapon as well. Then the third weapon for this class is Dual Blades. These have a guard and counterattack sort of system as its special ability, which is quite a fun concept for a couple of swords on this character especially, as it would let you mix it up with the tank style too. This is heavily about big, sweeping, spinning attacks or area of effect attacks for dealing with multiple targets at a time, or even some attacks that can fully pull enemies in towards you and group them up. Generally, the way that Hollow found himself intuitively playing this class was with the intention of using the greatsword for generating rage and for bigger hits against like single target mostly, then actually just swapping to the dual blades to spend his rage, especially for the area of effect sections. Next up then, let's talk about Berserker, which is the class that I played personally. This class also uses rage as its resource, functioning the same way as it does for the Swordsman, but this is one that I imagine will feel a lot more versatile and powerful in actual later game content or end game, where you have access to more methods of healing specifically, or even just access to more of the skill tree than I was able to reach during the quest. The main reason that I say this is that the Berserker is really cool to me. As a concept, it has a lot of overlap with the Swordsman. One weapon type is 2 axes, similar to 2 swords. One weapon type is a big axe, similar to the big sword. And then the third weapon type is chain blades, which is a very unique idea, but fills a sort of similar role to one of Swordsman's weapons too. The main difference is that Berserker has a lot more interesting weapon abilities, in my opinion, but at the cost of needing to be built around more specifically to make him really shine. First, we have chain blades. These are your longest range weapon, which isn't to say that they are a ranged weapon like a bow, but they just have a larger hitbox than the other 2 weapons for the class. A lot of your damage abilities with chain blades will cost health for you to use, so it hurts you to use the skills, and they often also either have a rage cost or a cooldown associated as well. The skills will often also give you stacks of Bloodthirst. This is a self buff that gives you 0.5% health regen and 10% attack increase for 12 seconds. This buff stacks up to 5 times, which gives you up to 2.5% health regen and of course 50% attack, which is quite a meaty buff. This is a major part of the Chainblades as a weapon, and the main way you are expected to manage your health. Your special ability with the weapon consumes your Bloodthirst attacks and gives you some rage and a heal depending on how many stacks you had. So you essentially spend your health as a resource, generate Bloodthirst stacks for some healing, and then spend the Bloodthirst stacks for a larger heal on yourself, as well as getting some rage too. My main issue with this in general, in the beta at least, was that the health cost of the skills vastly outweighed any sort of healing that I could do in early levels, and so I just avoided using this weapon type once I got to that point, which is sort of sad because I really do enjoy using them just visually and aesthetically. That said, aside from the longer range and the Bloodthirst shenanigans, this weapon type also focuses around grouping enemies up, pulling them together, as well as chill as an effect and crowd control in general. The second weapon type for Berserker is Twin Axes. The special ability for this one is called Berserk. This is essentially a mode that you can swap on and off at will at the cost of 40 stamina. While this is active, you do 20% increased damage and have 20% increased movement speed, but you drain health each second, and this will automatically disable if your health gets too low while it's active too. As for the rest of the playstyle, the weapon is about speed more than anything else, quite heavily. It has some throwing options for a bit more range, but importantly it has the ability to lower enemy defense, which is essentially a group-wide damage bonus for doing any sort of group content. But it also has the ability to lower enemy attack as well, making this a great weapon for just sort of making enemies more manageable in general. However, the real synergies with this weapon work around being at low health yourself. The weapon has a passive you can take that dramatically increases your damage at low health. The Berserk special ability drains your health to give you bonuses, and there is a skill for this weapon at a higher weapon mastery level than I've reached here that makes you unable to drop below 1 HP while it's active, while also giving you super armor. This is a really cool class fantasy in general for a Berserker, but definitely needs the right gear to support it. So again, I imagine this will feel way better at higher levels than it did to me at low levels. Then we have the third weapon, the one that I spent the most time with, which was the Battle Axe. This is a lot of your classically tanky options for the class. It has threat generation, it has a lot of shields that you can create as well, but the thing that I loved the most about it, as I do with any class in a game that has this as a skill, is Whirlwind. Whirlwind lets you just spin and hit everything around you while still being able to move, but Whirlwind also gives you a buff in this game, a stacking buff that increases attack speed mostly, which is great, but the weapon also has a whole set of different skills that directly interact with this Whirlwind stacking buff. You can get a rage generation buff that scales off of your Whirlwind stacks. There is a skill that scales its entire damage based off of the amount of Whirlwind stacks that you have, and it hits some really hefty numbers if you have the stacks. And you also have some passives that scale off of hit frequency with Whirlwind, which is incredible. You can make Whirlwind apply bleed, which is damage over time. It's just really versatile and cool, in my opinion, as someone who loves Whirlwind. The special ability for the axe is simply the ability to guard against attacks. It's basically blocking like you would with a shield, which makes incoming damage be a bit reduced if successful, but it can also work with some of the passives for the class too. Then the third class in the beta that was played by Josh, this was the Ranger. The resource this class works around is called Vigor. This works sort of like Rage, but in reverse. You start at maximum Vigor generally. Some of your abilities will spend Vigor, some of them will build Vigor, but it doesn't really depreciate over time, and so it's much more of a combo-oriented class in comparison to the Rage resource-based classes. This class then can have a lot of your sort of typical archer archetype built into it, but with some fun twists as well. This was the only ranged class that we had access to in the playtest that we took part in, which in itself gives it a very unique playstyle compared to the two melee classes that we've talked about so far. It interacts with enemy attacks and mechanics in just a totally different way because you are positioned differently at all times. And of course, for those planning to play on PC with mouse and keyboard, being able to mouse aim a bow in MMO combat, especially where headshots do more damage, it is a quite fun way to play the game. That said, there are 3 different weapons for the class, of course, and they have quite varied playstyles. And from what Josh and a few others that we've heard from that were in the playtest with us too, on current balance, at least in the early levels, one of the weapons felt much better than the other 2. That said, the first weapon is the bow. This is your classic archer weapon. It has your slower ranged attacks, they require sort of charging up for your shots, high precision requirement, and then also your more typical bow AoE type attacks like a rain of arrows coming down from above as well. The main unique thing with the special ability for this weapon is that you get 5 options of trick arrows that you can use on the fly. Fire arrows, frost arrows, poison arrows, explosive arrows, or impact arrows, and you can either fire them just as individual arrows by themselves for unique effects, or they also alter some of your skills entirely depending on which trick arrow you have selected, which is a pretty cool and unique system. The second weapon is the rapier. Josh barely messed around with this at all, so we don't have too much to say about it honestly, other than that it is focused heavily around basically parrying and counterattacking, as well as having a ton of movement and dodging involved in it. So basically you have 2 ranged options and 1 high mobility, high skill melee option. That said, the other ranged option is dual hand crossbows, which is always one of the coolest weapon types to see a character using, and from the playtest feedback, I expect this weapon to be one of the most popular ones used in the upcoming closed beta as well. This is extremely fast shots compared to the bow, so it's your high speed, ranged weapon, high mobility as well, making it easy to really use positioning to your advantage. The special ability with this one is a backflipping dodge while firing more crossbow bolts, so essentially it's an evasive maneuver with some offense added on too. As far as how the skills work, they are sort of split between a lot of damage over time type effects or even full-on nature magic effects, so this is a bit of a magical flavored ranger as well, or the other main way to push the skill tree for the hand crossbows at least is just super high speed, fast shots, shoot quick, shoot hard, and have fun. That does it for the 3 classes that we've personally seen and played then, which are the ones that will be in the closed beta test coming up next week. But just for the sake of completion, especially now that we have had a bit more context from our time in the game, and from just being able to see the character creation pages, let's talk about the other 3 classes as well, and what they will be looking like in the full game, starting with Sorceress, your proper full magic class. This one functions around mana as a class resource, which does start off full, it gets spent by your skills, and it regenerates over time. As well, now that we've seen their actual selection page, we know a bit more about what these sorcerers' actual weapon types will be used for, as unlike the more martial classes, it was pretty hard to guess what staff, orb, and book would do as far as actual different playstyles. But the 3 weapons for this class will be a staff, it will be a mana sphere, which is like a magical orb as well, and then the grimoire, which is a magic book. The staff itself is mostly going to be used for high damage destructive type spells and magic, so this will be a lot of your damage output with the class most likely, whereas the mana sphere is mostly about crowd control, buffs, debuffs, and controlling time, which is an interesting thing to include in there too, especially as that is a sort of potentially support archetype, but can also be viewed as a damage increasing archetype if it weakens enemies. Then the grimoire is actually all about radiant, light, and mostly healing for allies, and of course healing for allies is something that will be sought after and welcome in a party setting in this game, so I look forward to seeing how this one will work in a bit more detail later on. After that we have the Assassin, who looks like it will be extremely fun in my personal opinion from what we've seen so far. This is the second class to use Vigor as a class resource, so it functions similarly to the Ranger in that regard. The 3 weapon options for this class are Saber, which is just a really big curved sword, as well as Wrist Blades, which are 2 smaller, quicker weapons used as a pair. Then a full-on musket as a third option, which is a pretty cool thing to give to an assassin flavored class, especially in contrast to the Ranger class with less advanced technology. We don't get too much information about what will differentiate the weapons here like we did for Sorcerer, but expectations are that the Saber will be more based around larger, sweeping attacks, maybe a bit slower, probably a bit more AoE, might even be counter-attacky type as a weapon, compared to the Wrist Blades, which will be more faster, probably better suited to more precise combat like single target, and then the musket as your ranged option weapon will just be a classic ranged option as you don't have another ranged thing with the class. But given that it is a musket as a weapon, I really hope that instead of giving it like standard resource costing skills, they instead just make it all really high cooldown skills on this weapon to sort of like simulate a musket reload, but I just think that would be cool to play around. That's my own idea. Then our final class today is the Paladin, which is most likely going to be another personal favorite of mine in the proper game, a Holy Knight, who actually has 2 separate weapons with shields, but for interestingly different purposes. This is your second class with mana as a class resource, so you have to carefully manage your reserves and your spending over time. The 3 weapons for this class are the Lance, which also comes with a shield, being a main part of this weapon. It's your very high survivability and tanky option, according to the character's select screen at least, being the option most likely built around proper blocking as a part of it for the class, and possibly even tanking and threat generation. Then there is the Halberd, which which is a big two-handed polearm, and this is likely to be the main damage output weapon for the class from the wording here, sounding like it should have a lot of quite just sort of high area of effect attacks, most likely too. Then the third weapon option is the mace, which also comes with a shield, and this weapon is apparently going to be mostly based around healing allies and delivering judgment to the wicked. To me, this sounds almost like something where maybe it heals allies based on the damage done to enemies, but I could be reading a little bit too far into it here. For now, let's just say that this is the healing weapon archetype for the class, with maybe some damage options too. This makes Paladin quite unique, as it has a weapon that is very specifically suited towards tanking, a weapon that is very specifically suited towards healing, and then one that is very DPS focused, whereas the other classes generally have at least two heavily damage focused weapon types, and then only one with more survival or utility or group play focused options. That said, the Sorcerer also has a second sort of supporty thing, but from the sound of it, the orb will benefit the Sorceress as much as it does the other classes that you might be partied with. So I'm quite interested to see how the Paladin specifically actually plays in the future. That just about does it for today then, everyone. Some more in-depth information on all 6 classes coming in Chrono Odyssey on release, with more specific and deeper information on the classes that we have now actually played ourselves for a good number of hours. I've really enjoyed my time with this game so far. It definitely has polishing to be done, but it's essentially in its beta phase right now, and it is a real beta. It's not like the way that a lot of game companies throw around the term beta for a game that is otherwise finished and they just want to like run a limited time demo for it. This is an actual beta. The game is still being worked on, it's still being created, and there is a lot of polish to come to it over time. But the base that's under all of it, the actual foundation itself, feels really good to me, and the developers have said repeatedly over and over that there will be no pay to win at any point ever for this game. So personally, I'm starting to go full hype train on this one, because I have a very distinct feeling of missing playing the game and missing the playtest that we took part in. And any game that can make you miss it when you aren't playing it is definitely doing something right at the very least. I hope you've all enjoyed this then, and let me know which of these classes excites you most looking forward to Chrono Odyssey's beta and even its actual release. Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.